Okay, interruption number 2. Laertes replies, I am lost in it, my lord, but let him come. It warms the very sickness in my heart that I shall live and tell him to his teeth, thus didst thou. So we see Laertes' revenge start to be fueled here, and he's very excited by the reality that Hamlet is back, because now he thinks, even though he doesn't understand the letter, right, let him come. He's very excited to face him and tell him to his face, you did this, right, and try to get his revenge. Claudius replies, if it be so, Laertes, and how should it be so, how otherwise, will you be ruled by me? Will you listen to what I have to tell you? Will you help me? Will you let me guide you? And Laertes says, I am my lord, so you will not overrule me to a peace. As long as you don't stop me from getting revenge, then yes, I'll listen to you, right? The king replies, to thine own peace. I'll rule you to your own peace, right? I'll help you get to the point where you get your revenge. If he be now returned, as checking at his voyage, and that he means no more to undertake it, I will work him to an exploit. I'll work him to an action here, to a trick, basically. Now ripen my device, right, that I'm thinking of, under the which he shall not choose but fall. He'll have no choice but to fall. And for his death no wind of blame shall breathe, but even his mother shall uncharge the practice and call it accident. So I've got a plot, I've got an idea that will kill Hamlet, and no one will be able to place any blame. Even his mother will look at this and say, oh no, it was just a terrible accident. Laertes says, my lord, I will be ruled, the rather if you could so devise it that I might be the organ. Let me be the one who kills Hamlet. The king says, it falls right. And you have been talked of since your travel much, and that in Hamlet's hearing, for a quality wherein they say you shine. Your sum of parts did not together pluck such envy from him as did that one, and that, in my regard, of the unworthiest siege. And what part is that, my lord? A very ribbon in the cap of a youth, the king says, yet needful, too, for youth no less becomes the light and careless livery that it wears than settled age his sables and his weeds, importing health and graveness. 2 months ago, here was a gentleman of Normandy. I have seen myself and served against the French, and they can well on horseback. But this gallant had witchcraft in it. He grew unto his seat, and to such wondrous doing, brought his horse as had he been corpsed and demi-natured with the brave beast. So far he topped my thought that I in forgery of shapes and tricks come short of what he did. He was so talented on horseback, right? He was such a strong equestrian that it looked almost as if he grew into the saddle and that he was a part of the horse, okay? Basically, what is the king doing now? He is manipulating Laertes to say, you are so skilled in these certain areas of, practice, like equestrianism and riding horses and all of these things. People were talking about how good you were. Hamlet heard it. Hamlet got jealous. Okay, so the king is thinking of ways to exploit Hamlet here. And Laertes says, a Norman, was it? A person from Normandy? A Norman. Upon my life, Lamord, right? Laertes says, oh, it's got to be Lamord that you're talking about. Oh, the very same. I know him well, Laertes says. He is the brooch indeed and gem of all the nation. He's the best. He's the best there is. The king says, he made confession of you and gave you such a masterly report for art and exercise in your defense, and for your rapier most especial, that he cried out 'twould be a sight indeed if one could match you. So this guy, who everybody knows to be the best of the best, came to Elsinore and was bragging about how awesome Laertes was, especially at sword fighting. Especially at sword fighting. The escribers of their nation, he swore, had neither motion guard nor eye if you opposed them. Sir, this report of his did Hamlet so envenom with his envy that he could nothing do but wish and beg your sudden coming o'er to play with you. Now, out of this, what out of this, my lord? Laertes, was your father dear to you? Okay, so stop right there. We see the king is kind of building up Laertes' impression of himself, right? He's trying to make him feel a little arrogant, and he's also telling him, well, this guy, Lamord, who is just the best of the best, was bragging so much about you, Laertes, that Hamlet got so jealous. So jealous that he couldn't wait for Laertes to come back from France so that Hamlet could duel with him to prove that Hamlet was better than Laertes. So we've got some rivalry going on between these two foil characters, right? And then Claudius switches it from building up his ego to questioning how much he loved his father. Was your father dear to you? Or are you like the painting of a sorrow, a face without a heart? Do you really mean your grief? Is that real? Or are you just showing it? Are you trying to just portray, perhaps, that you mourn your father, that you actually loved him? And Laertes gets mad. Why ask you this? How dare you? Why would you ask that? And the king says, not that I think you did not love your father, but that I know love is begun by time, and that I see in passages of proof, time qualifies the spark and fire of it. There lives within the very flame of love a kind of wick or snuff that will abate it, and nothing is at a like goodness still, for goodness, growing to a pleurisy, dies in its own too much. That we should do when we would, for this would changes and hath abatements and delays as many as there are tongues and hands that are accidents, and then this should is like a spendthrift sigh that hurts by easing. But to the quick of the ulcer, let's get to the heart of the matter. Hamlet comes back. What would you undertake to show yourself indeed your father's son, more than in words? So it's very normal for people to love their parents. Of course it is, Claudius says. We spend so much time with them. Of course we would love them, right? Because time breeds love. And, many people say that they love, but when it comes to action, they fall a little short. So how much did you really love your father? Enough to do terrible things, or just enough to say you loved your father and then let his murder go unrevenged? You see how he's manipulating Claudius here? Or how Claudius is manipulating Laertes here? He's messing with his emotions. He's trying to kind of build him up, and then he backs off, and then he builds him up, and then he backs off. And then we see this. What would you undertake? What would you do to show yourself indeed your father's son more than in words? What would you do to prove how much you loved your father and how much you want your revenge? And Laertes replies, to cut his throat in the church. I would go as very far as to murder Hamlet in cold blood, cut his very throat in the church, the holiest of holy places. That's a bit extreme, no? All right, but we see how Claudius leads him to this extremity. Look at what Claudius says. No place, indeed, should murder sanctuize. Revenge should have no bounds. But, good Laertes, will you do this? Keep close within your chamber. Stay in your room. Hamlet, returned, shall know you are come home. We'll put on those shall praise your excellence and set a double varnish on the fame the Frenchman gave you, bring you in fine together and wager on your heads. So stay away from Hamlet. We're going to talk about how much the Frenchman, of course, was bragging about you. We're going to just kind of stir that up again, get Hamlet jealous again. And then we'll bring the two of you together in a competition, and we'll lay bets, all right? We'll lay wagers on your head to see who will win. He, being remiss, most generous, and free from all contriving, will not peruse the foils. He, not realizing that we are conniving here, that we're coming up with a plan, won't look over the swords, so that with ease, or with a little shuffling, you may choose a sword unbaited, a sword uncapped, okay? They would use practice swords, so they didn't actually kill one another when they were doing this. But he says Laertes can choose one without a cap on it. And in a passive practice, requite him for your father. So, oops, I grabbed the wrong sword, and just practicing, just dueling, just kind of playing this challenge, this game, accidentally kill Hamlet. Laertes says, I will do it. And for that purpose, I'll anoint my sword. To make sure, I'll put poison on my sword. I bought an unction of a mountebank so mortal that but dip a knife in it, where it draws blood, no cataplasm so rare, collected from all simples that have virtue under the moon, can save the thing from death that is but scratched withal. I bought a little thing of poison in my travels that is so powerful that if just the tiniest drop on the edge of a sword scratches you, it'll kill you. I'll touch my point with this contagion, that if I gall him slightly, it may be death. I'll make sure to put the poison on the sword so that even if I just scratch him a little bit with the sword, just nick him with it, it'll kill him. The king replies, let's further think of this. Let's think about this some more. Weigh what convenience both of time and means may fit us to our shape. Let's think it through, plan it out right. If this should fail, and that our drift look through our bad performance, 'twere better not assayed. If we mess this up somehow, it would be best if we didn't do it at all, because this will come down very badly on both of us. Therefore, this project should have a back or second that might hold if this did blast in proof. We're going to need insurance. If this somehow fails, we'll need a plan B. Well, technically a plan C, right? Because he's going to have a real sword instead of a practice sword. He's going to put poison on that sword. So now we need like a third level backup. Soft. Let me see. Hold on, let me think. We'll make a solemn wager on your cunnings. Ah, I have it, he says. When in your motion you are hot and dry, when you're fencing and you get hot and dry, is make your bouts more violent to that end. Push him, really push it so that you get really hot and tired, right? And that he calls for drink. I'll have prepared him a chalice for the nonce, whereon but sipping, if he by chance escape your venom stuck, our purpose may hold there. So, if he, as you get him like hot and sweaty and tired as he's sword fighting with you, he'll take a sip and I'll have a poisoned drink waiting for him, ready to go. The queen enters, okay? And the queen comes in and she says, one woe doth tread upon another's heels. Hold on.